Hello and welcome to my video on placebo and nocebo effect. In this video I will discuss another episode of cancer. This time it was bowel cancer and I will compare it with the previous cancer in the esophagus. I will compare how they arose and the underlying conditions that created the problem. This cancer actually arose after another episode of ovarian cancer, as I had the very first time that I got cancer. It was a metastasis from the ovarian cancer. And it is worth to mention the two episodes of ovarian cancer here too, because it shows a third example. This was about 5-6 months after the esophageal cancer cleared away. Now, the incidents that happened just prior to the second ovarian cancer. As I was driving down the street to go and do my shopping, there were several occasions where I saw a woman with two children walking down the street. And the first time that I saw them, it looked like she was walking them home from school. But the second time, the time didn't seem to match up. And then the last time, I saw them 4 or 5 times at least. I don't remember how many times I saw them. I had deliberately changed the time that I was driving out to around late morning lunchtime, and the same scene happened. And the idea in each case mentally presented to me was, where did they come from? And quite often said as, where they come from. Now, this was really the same in some sense as what had happened with the first ovarian cancer. I should mention here that the first ovarian cancer was a metastasis from a lung cancer. And they were hassling me at that time for smoking. Now, that doesn't change how it came about. The only difference here is, where did the cancer stem cell originate from? Now, at that time, there was a baby crying every night for more than a week. And the idea of what's wrong, where that's coming from, including the ideas where that come from and what's wrong, where that come from. And of course, the baby come from an ovum that was fertilized, and that ovum was originally in the ovary. So there's the idea of what's wrong in the ovary. So in the second sheet, where they tried to affect me to develop ovarian cancer, this is more or less a repeat of the same thing, where they're saying where that's come from, indicating the ovary or pointing to the ovary. They were trying to marry up two situations. Where did the woman with the two children walk into the street from? Where did they come from? Because no matter what time that I drove into the street, I always saw them in exactly the same place. So this was hardly coincidental that I saw them. This was a setup. They wanted me to see this scene. And there was the idea of what's going on here? Something's odd here, something's wrong here. Because no matter when I went out, there they were. They were also trying to then use that as a general suggestion to indicate the children. Where did they come from? And of course, again, the ovum and the ovary. In the first case, with the baby crying, they would have been presenting me with some ideas that I would have insightfully perceived, subconscious, in other words, that there was some problem in the ovary. So there's a mirror neuron response that created activity in my ovary, and that would overlap with the condition of the ovary when it's declined due to the concealed threat, and that is fear. In the second instance, they couldn't have been presenting much at the time that I saw the woman with the 2 children in the street. They did present some idea about, that's odd, you see them again. There was some idea I had mistaken as my own thinking, but I suspect that what they did was they later used that incident and made it feel like a memory that came to mind at various times, no matter what I was doing. I saw those people again. What's going on there? There's something wrong. Well, how come I see them in exactly the same place, no matter what time I go out? So there's still this idea of something wrong, and there's still the indication of the ovary. So again, there would be a coincident reactivity going on. In the one case, it would have been the decline of reactivity due to the concealed threat, because I would have been under a threat when they were presenting these ideas. And the other would have been the mirror neuron response due to the ideas and the notion that there's something wrong at the ovary. Makes it appear that there's an issue. I strongly suspect that there would be images presented that indicate some real problem at the ovary. And I suspect that images are used because just before the metastasis to the uterus happened, after that first ovarian cancer, someone stopped me in the street and told me about a woman that I hardly knew really that had become pregnant and was expecting a baby. So of course that is pointing at the uterus, and they must have used images then after that when they hassled me further, and I then developed the metastasis to the uterus. So again, there's coincident activity going on in the ovary. The mirror neuron response due to the idea of something wrong, and of course the decline, however the ovary exists in this inactive state. The combined reactivity then creates some suspicious looking reactivity in the body. So the body moves to react to that, to build a barrier for protection. And of course, the only barrier the body can build is a cell barrier. Now, what happened after that? Just before Christmas, probably a week or 2 before Christmas, 2 friends rang me, one after the other. Now, I thought both of these women were genuine friends. Both of them made nasty remarks, very nasty remarks. And there was the idea of you're being shafted. And that idea was presented under the feeling of sadness because I thought I had lost 2 friends. And just before Christmas, why have they made these remarks? I couldn't figure it out, but I felt sad, even grieving that I lost two friends, one after the other. My body was reacting with grief, and one thing that I had seen was that there were changes in water metabolism both in the bowel and in the lungs when there is grief, even sadness, but definitely with grief. So there was sadness and grief along with fear response because of the concealed threat. So the bowel, being part of the digestive system, would be declined during a concealed threat, existing in some sort of inactive state. And a mirror neuron responds because of the idea of you being shafted and the idea of some long shaft or something being pushed into the side of my abdomen as the idea of being shafted was being presented. Let's look at the combined reactivity in the affected areas in each case. All are affected by the concealed threat, so there is an inactive state. But in the esophagus, due to anxiety, there is an alternating active and inactive state. In the bowel, there is also changed water metabolism due to sadness and grief, and all the relevant areas are affected by some reactivity due to mirror neuron response. The evidence I saw for spontaneous remission was first in the esophageal cancer. The lump in my esophagus was gone within a week or two after I saw that the ideas of cutting across the front of it had nothing to do with my body, but the events happening in my yard. And that happened because the reactivity due to the mirror neuron response was gone. I think that the anxiety was gone too, but I don't remember if it was or not, so I can't say that for sure. However, I have a strong memory with the events to the resolution of the bowel cancer. My guru, who has passed away, is a spiritual ally, and on many occasions she has come to mind with a message when I have needed some help. These are ideas in my mind that arose in my mind. On this occasion, she asked why was I grieving, and I said, I have lost two friends. And she said, friends wouldn't make those sorts of nasty remarks. These are two enemies. They've revealed themselves. They've revealed their hand. Rejoice that you have lost two enemies. I was a bit shocked in the first instance, but I quickly realized that she was absolutely right. These were enemies, and I hadn't seen that before. So, having lost them, having lost the two enemies, I became very happy. All of the sadness and grief had evaporated in that instant. Now here too, the mirror neuron response was ended because the idea of you've been shafted wasn't going to stick anymore. In reality, they had shafted themselves. So I was laughing with that idea. So again here, while there was sadness and the mirror neuron response, as well as the inactive conditions of the concealed threat in the area, in the bowel, a composite of different types of activity that combined together and were unusual, extremely unusual, that my body was unable to decipher. So was there possible harm? However, once the sadness was gone and the mirror neuron response was gone, there was nothing unusual anymore in my body. So my body then moved to remove any barrier, any cell barrier that had been built. Now, once the bowel cancer had dissipated, very soon after I realised that the ovarian cancer was also gone. I didn't understand that at the time, but now I realise that very soon after it had dawned on me that, of course, it was getting towards Christmas. There would have been school holidays, so the woman with the 2 children carrying school bags, etc., was a complete setup. So there was nothing that they could then use to point to the ovaries. Anxiety is thinking or puzzling, being troubled somehow, combined with a fight or flight response. So the thinking stopped, and when the thinking stopped, the anxiety had evaporated. This is the same as what happened with the esophageal cancer, because once I saw that the scenarios they were talking about were happening outside and not in my body, the thinking stopped and the anxiety stopped and the mirror neuron response stopped. I was no longer caught up in what they were doing, the ideas they were presenting. So my body stopped reacting, and as there was no further reason for any cell barrier, it was cleared away. My experiences had made me believe that it was necessary to address the issue and overcome the emotional reactivity, and preferably to also be able to dismiss the ideas so that the mirror neuron response wouldn't apply. But in recent times, I've now realised that even if you cannot address the issues, and even if the mirror neuron response is there, you can still effect deliberate, spontaneous remission of the cancer. It is only necessary to realise that there's nothing abnormal in the body. It is just something unusual, of course, but normal given the circumstances. With this realisation, you will inherently know that there's no possible danger, no possible harm. It is normal reactions that are combined, and that's all. So no matter how much foul play is being levelled against you, with that realisation, you can stand against it. It's easy street. No cell barriers will develop. No cancers will form. You will retain your health.